I'm George Whitesides. I'm the CEO of Virgin Galactic, and it's a pleasure to be here with Peter, who has made it to the next round. So congratulations to you. And why don't you introduce yourself and your company?
Thanks a lot, George. My name is Peter Platzer. I'm the CEO of NanoSatisfi, and we build and launch satellites to do large asset tracking and weather monitoring. One of the things I'd love to get your input and advice on is both of them are providing a service where there isn't really an equivalent. Like, for example, for us it is, we will be able to tell you where every ship on Earth is at any given point in time, all the time. And that information is simply not available today, even though 80% of global trade is happening on ships. So how do you price a product which doesn't exist today? There is a value for it, but how do you figure out the pricing? You guys also, with your suborbitals, but also with your launcher, you have a product, being in space, it doesn't exist for individuals. How did you guys think about pricing that product?
Well, it's a great question, and it's a classic entrepreneurial issue. I think what we did was a mix of what market research we could do, and then mixed it in with honestly sort of like an educated guess at what the marketplace would bear, and then testing with real customers, and that's what we've done, and we've had a lot of success with that. So it's sort of a mixture of a bit of technical research based on comparables. For us, it was a sort of a luxury product. And there had actually been some offerings, although not connected to real vehicles in the past. And so we picked a number that was actually higher than the number offered by those other vehicles, but had a lot of success. And very quickly we saw that real customers were putting down deposits. So, I think, as with any entrepreneur, there's sort of the question of pricing is a pretty critical one. How are you pursuing the problem?
Well, we are generally approaching it from what's the value to the customer. We do look at how do they solve, even if partially, the problem today, and what are they paying for that. And then, especially when it comes to weather, that's an even more interesting market because the perceived value is very high. The US government is spending about $12 billion on acquiring weather information and weather services, but is making it available, even if the format is not very clear, for free. And unfortunately, our weather satellites are going to fall out of the sky, so that free service of the US government is not going to be available going forward. And so both private entities as well as public entities are actually scrambling, and how do we replace that service from NOAA? Somewhat similar to what you have mentioned. We look at comparables, we look at how people are solving their problems today. What makes it tricky is that if someone is, let's say, solving 10% of the problem, and you know the price for that, and you can solve 90% of the problem, or you can solve the problem literally 10 times as good. Charging them 10 times as much money, that's not going to be a good strategy. But finding how do you do that, because you also don't want to burn those early customer relationships, right? Because there are clearly very, very core customers, and you don't want to call them up and say, what's your price plan? And you say, $1 million, and they say, okay, great, where can I sign for the next 50 years? At which point you set the wrong price. Or they say, well, I'll call you in 5 years and never want to talk to you again. So there is like a high risk with especially important customers early on. And that's like a little what we're trying to navigate. We don't have a Richard Branson and a Galactic brand name and network behind us, which helps. We're a startup, and so that makes some of those conversations already a bit more tricky because you are the small guy in the room, and you don't want to be off by an order of magnitude, even though you know that the value of your product is 10x or 50x of what is open right now.
Yeah, I would say, and I'm sure you're doing this, the key point is for you is to get people using the service once the satellites go up, and once the value is demonstrated, then you have a lot more flexibility to start charging different levels. You recently raised some money with a fund, and I just wanted to sort of have you talk about that because that's an exciting milestone for your company, and why did that company why did that fund decide to put some money in your company?
Yeah, so it came about of Dimitri from Vision Robotics have been monitoring us for a while, and even though we were close because we were actually not looking for any money, he continued to have a conversation with us, and clearly their perspective from robotics and improving capabilities for technology in areas that are hard to reach for humans was very valuable to us. And so we basically created an opportunity for him and a couple other people that joined in like I would call like a mini round, then has again extended our runway significantly in running this company and launching more satellites. And we are quite excited to have someone like Dimitri on board in bouncing off ideas about how do you get new technology into devices quicker than traditionally was possible.
I think what's very interesting is that there seems to be sort of a network of a nexus of space, innovation, software, technology in the Silicon Valley, maybe around Ames or around Google and related places. Is that your perception? Is there a community growing there now?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I was just interviewed on exactly that topic. I spoke at New Space Conference. There is definitely that focus here in Silicon Valley happening. Part of it is Ames. We have a contract with Ames. Pete Worden, the center director, is a big proponent and supporter of us because he thinks what we do is very important and really is going to help not only the commercial sector but also the public sector in like really reducing the cost of access to space 3 orders of magnitude. You got Planet Labs, you got Skybox, you got not least NanoSatisfi, an incubator that we are part of, who is really moving forward that hardware movement. And you got Steve Jurgensen from DFJ is a big supporter of space, and there's a number of other VCs that have reached out to us with very, very strong interest in what we do, and it's all happening here in the Valley. I think there might be a second center down in LA for obvious reasons with SpaceX being there, but I would be highly surprised if in 5 years companies that want to start space-related activities will not still be in Silicon Valley.
What I think is very interesting is that I think what we're seeing now is that certain VCs and also sovereign wealth funds, in our case, have made investments at a range of different capital levels in space technologies. And I think what's exciting is the prospect of some exit events coming down the road across the industry. And I think as those happen, then we'll see that trend continue over time. We only have a couple minutes left, but I just wanted to talk to you about your name, actually. How did you come up with the name of your company?
Yeah, so the name was a play on words that we are using nanosatellites, which is NanoSatisfi, and then it was a play on satisfy, basically satisfying the need for people to get access to space, not only on a government level, but also on an individual level, and make everyone's life better. And then Fi, that Fi is similar to like Wi-Fi and high fidelity. It's not an ideal name. We spend a lot of time and actually money on trying to come up with a name that better describes immediately the service that we're offering, which is insight into globally important processes through data from space. But it has been a little bit of a frustrating exercise because you get blocked with existing trademarks. And so one thing I'm wondering is, at what point should we just stick with the name NanoSatisfi, that while not perfect, is widely out in the press and we identified with, and just stick with it and run with it, rather than come up with a new name that it's just been hard to come by?
Well, it's a tough question to ask. Let me give you two responses. One is that one of the things that I hate the most in any organization is burning cycles of precious people on stuff that just doesn't matter. For example, I've seen so many strategic plans or vision statements burn hours and hours of people when they should just be building hardware. So you have to be careful that it doesn't take too much of your time. I don't think it's a bad name. I think it's an interesting name. I don't think it's something that immediately maybe tells you what exactly it is that you're doing, and it sounds maybe sort of I don't know. It's an interesting one. I will say this. I think you're at the stage where if you wanted to change your name, you could. Certainly these other folks, Cosmogia, I think, turned into Planet Labs, and that was sort of an easy, quick change, and you probably do have that flexibility. What I would say is don't spend an enormous time or effort on it. I would talk about it over beers, every other weekend with your guys, and maybe at some point you'll see something that's significantly better, but I wouldn't stress too much about it. The main thing is building something that works.
Well, that makes me sleep better because I feel very much like you that I want to, we have a big poster in the office which says, short, build stuff that matters, and things that matter is definitely not name, but putting satellites in the air and giving people access to data that they wouldn't have otherwise.
I think that's right. Well, Peter, it's been great to talk to you. I think it's very exciting that you both made it to the next round of this competition, but more importantly are continuing to raise money and have a good runway and some really exciting technology coming down the pike. So good luck to you in the next round, and we'll be following you closely.
Thanks a lot, Jed. Really appreciate it.